Hi. This conversation is quite random, unplanned, but I want to share my thoughts on performance appraisals. Sometimes I feel that it is high time that we do away with annual appraisals. You can never do away with performance appraisals. Appraisal is a part of the process. Appraisal needs for improvement. Unless you keep assessing yourself or assess each other, we don't know how well we are doing and we can't improve. Therefore, appraisal is a part of life. But annual appraisals, if you look at the last 50 to 60 years of story in our country, there were times where they mattered a lot. They helped organizations to improve, people to improve. They were associated with incentives, rewards, promotions, placements, so many things. But today we are in a totally different world. People are a lot more mature. They don't need to be told what they are expected to do on a piece of paper with tasks and targets and things like that. Although there may still be organizations where they need role clarity, identification of targets, key performance areas, and so on. But these organizations will soon mature and come to the level where from day one an employee joins, he or she is reasonably made to be clear about what is expected from the organization. I think today we talk of uh, 90 days to settle down, 60 days to settle down, 9 days to settle down, or start contributing from day one. I think most organizations recruit people so that they can start contributing from almost the time they are recruited. So, all that you need to learn about your job, the skills required, the expectations, KPAs, KRAs, you learn about them even before you join the organization. That is the maturity levels of many organizations today we are facing with. If that is so, what is the point of having annual performance appraisals where at the end of the year you review the KRAs or KPAs, look at the performance indicators, have a dialogue which often is a painful kind of a dialogue which most people either avoid as bosses or as appraisees, dread it, and every time a series of appraisal take place, they are more demotivated people than they are motivated people. So they have, I think, begun to serve more dysfunctionalities than functionalities. If that is so, then what are we saying about performance management? We do it with performance appraisals, but how do we make sure that people give their best and perform well? I think there are a few things which are very important to be done. Today, you don't anymore set targets for the year. They are non-negotiable. I think you do have some kind of an aspiration, what you want to achieve as a company or as a department, etc. I think it is constantly being discussed in annual, certainly, meetings, and a lot more on quarterly meetings, monthly meetings, and even in daily meetings. So it's very clear what every person is expected to contribute. It also gets clear if we have not done a good job today, next day, or at best I think next week, in the next meeting, departmental meeting of your department, or a review meeting, or whatever get-togethers you have, there are many mechanisms to control your contributions. It becomes clear, and therefore you immediately start making a mid-course correction. So it's a part of life: appraisal, planning, reappraisal, and reworking, and identifying if you didn't have a particular skill, quickly identifying it and making effort to acquire the skill, and contributing has become a part of life. So therefore, this whole question of spending enormous amounts of time filling in forms, collecting forms, recording these, and at the end of it, since you struggling, breaking your head, who should be rewarded, how do we compare, are people comparable at all these kind of issues, I think it is high time that we keep them aside. So if you do that, what therefore is the purpose of managing performance? In my view, The most important purpose of managing performance is to create a sense of ownership on the part of the performer. The person who is doing the job should understand fully and commit himself herself fully to the job he or she is doing and acquire through a variety of mechanisms whatever he or she is required to do the job well. If support is required, get support. Have a dialogue, have a conversation. If you need different set of timings, do that. If you need assistance, then talk about that. You don't need any of these, but you are not very sure if the way you are asked to do is the right kind of a thing, then have a dialogue. So what becomes important is giving an enormous amount of create space for the individual to decipher his or her own performance and say, this is what I am expected to do, this is what I wish to do, this is how I want to make a difference, this is how I am going to spend my time. This is likely to be the consequence to other people, my department, my company, and others if I do things in this particular way, and so on. So, I think the more and more opportunity you give to the individual to articulate whatever he or she is doing, in other words, articulate his performance, share performance ideas, and undertake mid course corrections, so that at the end of the day, the person walks back home with a sense of satisfaction that he or she made a difference. I accomplished something. I spent 8 or 9 hours in a day, and I think at the end of these 9 hours, I think things are this way different, and this is my contribution. If not at the end of the day, maybe at the end of 2 days, 3 days, or at the end of the week. You can't wait for unlimited amount of time for the person to have a sense of accomplishment and feeling that he or she made a difference in doing the tasks. In fact, most of the tasks are so well defined, you know hour by hour, if not day by day, how well you have been performing. So the first thing we need to do is to shift the ownership of performance, definition of performance, deciding the contours of performance and other thing to the individual. So this is an important thing to make every individual enjoy his job or her job. So that is what I mean by creating or getting ownership of the performer. After having done that, we are not going to say therefore the organization has no role. I think organization has an important role to be constantly in touch with the individual, to equip him or her, and not only as an individual, equip the entire team with all the resources that are required. It may be visible resources, invisible resources. It may be simple, I think, simple things. Somebody listens to the issues and comes up with maybe new solutions, or appreciate the issues, empathize these issues, and cares for the people who are there, and treats people not merely as numbers, but as, I think, a bundle of flesh and blood with a heart and a mind and the brain and so on. I think that is when you start respecting each individual, respecting the process, respecting organizations. I think this is the change that is required. So planning becomes a continuous part of life. The performance planning is every individual does planning. It becomes a part of the culture. There are continuous performance dialogues, and one need not say this is a monthly dialogue, quarterly dialogue, periodic dialogues, but this is a part of life. Whenever it is required, it happens. In some cases, a weekly it may happen. In some other cases, daily it may happen. At another cases, it may happen once in a month. It all depends upon the kind of setting, structure, and so on. It's possible for a marketing manager or a regional sales head to have only once in a month meetings with each one of the people, spend enough time, get to know, get information, and then change his or her policies and so on. So performance management more becomes, rather than supervising people at the bottom, it becomes a mechanism of informing people at the top whatever things are happening, and helping them to create an atmosphere where every individual enjoys his or her job and has a sense of accomplishment at the end of the day. If that happens, I think the whole question of whether I should have incentives whether there should be performance linked pay, and all those kind of things become really secondary. I think people should be helped to enjoy their work. You come to work to enjoy it and feel that you made a difference. I think that is what performance should be, performance management should be. So, the new definition of performance management is helping the person to understand, set his own priorities, and learn to enjoy, and with commitment and with competence, wherever required, acquire the competence, and with commitment makes a difference in the organization by doing tasks whatever he or she is expected to do and contributing to the top line, bottom line of the organization. I'm not eliminating contribution to the top line, bottom line, because as long as organizations exist, they employ people and people have a role and responsibility. You cannot ignore that all organizations work for a goal, and one of the goals is certainly to make profits. If you don't make profits, then you are not serving enough people. So profits is a means of serving the society and so on. So I have no intention of detaching results and service and profits, etc., from performance management. That perspective always remains. But it is very important for us to help people to create an ambience where performance becomes enjoyable. When it happens, I think people will not really care so much about whether you are working for 40 hours or 70 hours or whatever. I think they enjoy work. Work becomes an integral part of life. I think this should be the objective. I don't think there are any simple mechanisms or systems that can make this happen. What is required is the spirit and a culture. So I hope most organizations move towards a performance, creating this kind of a performance culture where people give their best, enjoy their work, and enjoy life. I think performance becomes integrated into life. When you perform well, you are having a healthy life and you live longer and you make everyone else around you healthy. That should be the kind of a purpose. May sound philosophical, but I suppose I think it's high time that we move in this kind of a direction. Thank you for sparing your time and listening to these random thoughts.